worse. As a good example of this, growing up, she's a marvelous young lady now, incredible mother. I'm just so proud of her and so pleased with her. But in her teenage years, the part of me that is unfortunate came out. And she had a little bit of a rebellious streak in her, kind of a wild streak. And there was a period of time between the ages of 13 and 16 that were less than heavenly, let's say. One time we caught her screwing up and smoking and drinking and some of the stuff that teenagers sometimes do. And so we had to withdraw some of her privileges. She was grounded and things of that sort. Eventually, she earned some trust back. And that's very important, parents. You have to give kids a light at the end of the tunnel. This isn't an eternal punishment. You have to earn trust back, and then we'll give it to you again. And so she earned some trust back, and she wanted to go out dancing at a teen center with her friends. And so we said, Danae, well, can we trust you now? And she said, oh, yeah, I've learned my lesson. You can trust me. So we let her go. I drove her and her friends to this teen center, dropped them off at 8 o'clock, and I said, I'll be back at 11 o'clock. But now we empowered her because we're testing her. We're not tempting her because we don't want her to fall. We're testing her because we want her to succeed. And because we're testing her, we keep our eyes open, as parents should do. And so I didn't go back at 11 o'clock. I went back at 10 o'clock. And I sat in the back of that teen center with my coat up like that. Dun, 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 dun. I just wanted to enjoy some music. Nothing else to do on a Saturday night. So I sat in the back and I was just kind of observing. And as I'm scouting over this little teen center, all of a sudden I see Danae coming out with her group of 7 or 8 friends. And they all look exactly alike. I chuckled when I saw that. It's amazing, little clones. But one of the things that they were all clones, they all were holding their cigarettes. They come out of the youth center and they're all just like, doing and they're all sitting around and they're talking, whatever. Now, I don't believe in you embarrassing or humiliating your kid in front of others, so I didn't say anything at that time. I, at 11 o'clock, just sort of appeared and drove them all home. I did mention, however, that when we got in the car, I went, smells like cigarette smoke. And these little girls, God bless them, little hypocrites, they all go, oh yeah, some kids were smoking in there. It was so gross. Little hypocrites. Her sentence just got doubled. And so when we get home, that's when we ground her for life, But the thing is, the kids need to be tested. Their character has to be formed. And that's basically what God does to us. He tests us out of his love. He wants to refine us. He wants to grow us. And with each testing, we're demonstrating whether or not we'll be faithful covenant partners with him or not. What can he trust us with? And the Bible tells us that the more we pass those tests, the more we prove ourselves trustworthy, the more he entrusts us with. You remember the parable of the talents that Jesus told. A talent was simply a monetary unit in the first century. And he tells this parable about a master who gives one servant 10 talents and another servant 5 talents and another servant 1 talent. And then he went away on a trip. And when he came back, he asked, what did you do with the money I gave you? He was testing them during that time. And 2 of them did good stuff. They doubled the money. But the other one, because he didn't trust the character of the master, he hung on to it. And so that he had his talent taken away. And then Jesus tells us that what the master says to the servants who did good, he says this, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Interesting phrase. What this important teaching is telling us is this. The key to moving into greater levels of kingdom service, the key to moving into greater levels of kingdom impact, the key to moving into greater levels of kingdom responsibility, and the key to moving into greater levels of kingdom joy is being faithful with what God has given you. Making the right decisions about what you do with the things God has given you. God has given you gifts and time and money and talent and resources and a calling on your life, because all of us are called to kingdom service. And what he's wanting to know is this. Are you trustworthy with this? Will you use it in the ways that he leads you and guides you? And we answer that question every day of our life through 1,000 decisions we make every day. There's maybe a person on your block who's a shut-in, and you know about this person. And something inside of you is saying you ought to be the one person on the block who visits that shut-in once a month or once a week. But that, of course, means that you might have to give up your favorite television show or something of the sort. You are being tested. That's a decision you have to make. It could be the case that somebody here got a huge bonus for Christmas. And the Lord is telling them, I want you to, yes, enjoy some of that, but also invest some of that in the kingdom and bless some poor folks with that. But the other part of you says, boy, I really like that plasma television set that I've always wanted, and I have just enough to get that. Well, what are you going to do? See, that's something of a test. And if we're faithful in the little stuff that God gives us, He'll make us faithful in more stuff to have a greater kingdom impact in people's lives. Some of us are right now filling out our taxes, and maybe the question we're being asked is this: are we going to be honest with that or not? Maybe you have just habitually always cut corners and cheated a little bit, and because Uncle Sam gets too much money anyways, and you don't even agree with everything that the government does, and I understand that completely, but that's not your call when it comes to filling out taxes. And the Lord is saying to you, listen, are you going to be faithful here? Maybe no one can catch you, but I know what you're doing, and I'm calling on you to have integrity in this. See, that becomes now a test. The more we respond to tests in kingdom ways, the more useful we become to the kingdom, and the greater our capacity to enter into the joy of the kingdom. And we've got to know that there is nothing in our life that is too small for God not to care about it. We sometimes minimize the white lies and the little stuff. But see, what this text is saying is that until we get faithful on that small stuff, God's not going to entrust us with more stuff. And it could be that some people here are really missing out on great opportunities to grow in the kingdom and to make a great kingdom impact and to have more joy in your life because of the little tiny things that you're doing that aren't kingdom. The decisions you're making that really are against God's will. Now let me make sure that I'm avoiding three possible misunderstandings on this whole testing teaching. Three misunderstandings. Number one, the testings are not to prove to God whether or not you're worthy of being saved. Okay, this is a testing that's about equipping you for kingdom service and growing in the kingdom and getting your character formed, but it's not about your salvation. We don't jump through hoops to prove to God that we're worth saving because, in fact, we're not worthy of His salvation. We're saved by what Jesus does, not by what we do, okay? So we got to keep that distinct. It's not about jumping through hoops to prove that we're worth saving. Secondly, the kingdom, it's not about, not every test we go through is a God-orchestrated test. Some of the stuff we go through, some of the tests we go through are the result of choices we make and choices other people make. Now, God uses that. Times where our character is being tried, we have to make these kind of decisions. God will use that to watch and see whether or not you'll remain faithful to the kingdom. And He'll use that to build your character. But it doesn't mean that God orchestrated that. It's not like God was behind all of your decisions and all the decisions of other people that led you into that testing situation. Which leads to a third very important point that we need to make about this testing teaching. God does test us, but it doesn't mean that every hardship we go through is a testing of any sort, let alone a testing that God Himself orchestrated. And this is important because there's a widespread misunderstanding out there about this. A lady I knew a number of years ago had a teenage daughter killed by a drunk driver. And her pastor, God bless his soul, he meant well, but he said to her, you must really be a warrior for God because God will never test you beyond what you're able to bear. And this woman understandably became enraged towards God. You mean God killed my daughter to test me? To see if I was going to remain loyal to Him? She got a picture in her mind of a sort of a Nero type of tyrant, Nero in ancient Rome, who says to subjects, will you remain loyal to me no matter what? And they go, yeah. And he pulls out one of their kids and shoots them and says, are you still loyal to me? I mean, what a picture of God to have. And so this woman became understandably enraged towards God. And if this happened to me because God knew I could bear it, how I wish I'd been unfaithful all my life, because then my daughter would still be alive. Do you see how this stuff, how bad theology can screw up your head? It is true that the Bible says God will never test you beyond what you're able to bear. You'll always have a way of escape. That's true. But where in the Bible does it say that every hardship we go through is such a test? It doesn't say that. The nightmarish hardships we go through in life are the result of the fact that we live in a war-torn creation that's populated by human and angelic free agents. And free agents sometimes make stupid and sometimes make evil and vicious choices that bring about evil in life. That's not about God, that's about them. If I go home this afternoon